Hello and welcome everyone to part 2 of our live 3-panel series, Understanding Permanency for Children and Youth. My name is Chantal Genova and I am part of the Adopt for Life team. Today's discussion features leaders in child welfare who will share their insights to help us understand what permanency means for children and youth. So I'm very pleased and honored to introduce our panel for today. We're going to start from the West Coast and move across. Kim Grabowski, instructor at the University of Victoria and a board member with the North America Council for Adoptable Children. Kim is Cree on her mother's side and Polish on her father's side, belonging to the Peguis First Nation. Kim's interest in adoption has been advocating for Indigenous children to be connected with their culture, community, and family whenever possible. Leah Deans, Resource Director at the Adoption Support Center of Saskatchewan. Leah has been with Adoption Support Center of Saskatchewan for 18 years. Her experience as an adoptive parent gives her a unique perspective in providing services to adoptive families. Leah is a strong advocate for families and children and believes in the value of parenting, education, permanency, and post-adoption preservation supports. And Michelle Young, Director of Service, Ongoing Services, Indigenous Services and Equity Lead at Children's Aid Society of London, Ontario. In Michelle's 20 years in child protection, she worked in the areas of intake, ongoing foster, and adoption before moving into the role of Director of Service and Equity Lead for the Children's Aid Society of London and Middlesex in Ontario. Her passion has always been using her voice to challenge oppression and the status quo in all areas of her life. Julie de Betsy, Executive Director at Adopt for Life. Julie has been a passionate advocate in the nonprofit sector for more than 20 years. Along with the Adopt for Life team, she has formed collaborative relationships with the Children's Aid Society agencies across the province, as well as with organizational partners, including the Adoption Council of Canada. A change maker at heart, Julie has helped shape legislation designed to strengthen the child welfare system to better protect some of Ontario's most vulnerable young people. Julie and her husband are adoptive parents to a sibling group of 3 older children. Kathy Murphy, Executive Director at the Adoption Council of Canada. Kathy has over 30 years of experience working in social services and child welfare and has been a Pride trainer for over 15 years. A strong advocate for first families, permanency for kinship caregivers, customary caregivers, legal guardians, and adoptive families, as well as for children and youth living in and from the child welfare system. Kathy and her husband are the proud parents of 2 children who both joined their family through adoption. Yannick Munger, Treasurer at la Fédération des Parents Adoptants du Québec, FPAC. Yannick is the proud father of 2 children who joined the family through international adoption. In 2013 and 14, he actively contributed to the actions of a group of adoptive parents to obtain equitable benefits for adoptive families within the Quebec Parental Insurance Plan. He volunteers on the board of directors of the FPAC and is currently in the role of treasurer and co-spokesperson. And representing the East Coast, Catherine Derry, Regional Coordinator at the New Brunswick Adoption Foundation. Catherine is the mother of 2 adopted children and an adoptee herself, bringing an understanding from both perspectives. She has been with the New Brunswick Adoption Foundation since 2013 and has special knowledge in the field of education, autism, complex needs, and diversity. And now I will introduce our moderator for this afternoon, Erwin Ellman. Erwin is a global strategic advisor at Until the Last Child, an organization created so that every child in Canada who needs a healthy, permanent home with a nurturing family gets one. He is also a special advisor for the Laidlaw Foundation, who invests in the education of the underprivileged and underrepresented to break the cycle of poverty, reduce inequality, and develop a new generation of leaders. As well, Erwin was the Ontario Provincial Advocate for Children and Youth from 2008 to 2019. Erwin and his wife are the adoptive parents of 2 young sons. So thank you. Thank you to our panelists for being here today. And for those of you joining us live, thank you for watching. Feel free to ask questions and add your comments in the chat. We do want to remind you that this is being live streamed on our public Facebook page. So anything you share in the comments is something that is going to be publicly available. So we ask you to be mindful about sharing identifiable information, names, health information, that type of thing, that you might not want to necessarily share with the public. So with that in mind, we want to hear from you, and we hope you find this discussion informative and engaging. So I'm sure you're all eager to get started. So I'm now going to pass things over to our moderator, Erwin Elman.
Thank you, Chantel. Hi to all the panelists. Give a wave. Thank you for letting me walk alongside you and try and do a little bit of traffic copying so that everybody gets a chance to talk. Thank you so much. It's an honor. I just started renovating outside my window as I started talking. So if you hear banging, anybody on Facebook Live, that's not my wife upstairs. That's the renovators next door. I'm sorry. I want to start by doing a land acknowledgement, and I want to read it. I know that can seem performative at times, like people do that, but I want you to know that it's not because it's not in our hearts. It's actually because it is in our hearts, that the land acknowledgement that I'm reading was actually created and put together by the organizers, and they thought long and hard about what they wanted to say. So I think it's important for me and for all of us to get their words right, because they do come from their heart. So excuse me while I read it, because I did not memorize it. I couldn't. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge all the lands which we call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improve our own understanding of local Indigenous people and their cultures. We have guests and speakers today from across Canada. We acknowledge that together we work and gather on treaty lands and territory of the First Peoples of Canada, and we pay tribute to their legacies and teachings as we seek to strengthen ties with the communities we serve. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. We acknowledge that we are all treaty people and accept our responsibility to honor all our relations. Please join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we are and can each in our own way strive to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. I'll just take a moment. Thank you. So I have a series of questions to ask the panel, and people will respond. They only have 3 minutes, and I've already taken up 3 minutes telling you that they only have 3 minutes. So I'm going to try and stop talking and let them talk. We will have time for questions, I think, that Chantel might see online. And so I'm just going to go right into it and ask the first question. And I think Kim and Leah and Yannick, you guys are going to respond. And the first question is really about the entire adoption experience itself. As a community, how do we celebrate the joy that can come from adoption, kinship, customary care as families grow together, while still respecting and honoring the loss and grief that some children might feel in the adoption process? So Kim, do you want to start? You have to unmute yourself, I think.
There we go. Thank you, Ian. Can you hear me now? Excellent. Thank you, Erin, for that wonderful opening. And I'd also like to thank the panel and all the nations across Canada and everybody that's online here and the Adoption Council of Canada for allowing me to be here. I used to work with Lutlamitals Manam. It is a First Nations agency within the Cowichan Valley here that I have the honor of working and living here and being able to play. One of the wonderful things that we were able to do as an adoption manager was work with the community and work with the maternal and the paternal side of the families in regards to cultural planning for children that were being adopted into non-Indigenous homes and Indigenous homes. Part of that celebration was we held a cultural ceremony for first it was 10 children, and then 1 year, and then another was 8 children the following year. Parents were able to come to the big house during this ceremony to see and honor the adoptive parents that were adopting their children, and plus our community partners. We had an absolutely incredible ceremony. The last one I attended, there was like 300 people there, and it was amazing, absolutely amazing. And the children were so proud to know that their community as Cowichan children were there to witness this celebration, that they were being adopted. And knowing also during our family meetings that their family was going to be a part of who they continued to be as Cowichan children, and they were going to be supported by their adoptive families and their biological families as well. Is that my 3 minutes, Erin?
Good job. Nice job. Thank you, Kim.
You're
Leah, do you
welcome.
have anything to add to that?
Yes, actually. First of all, thank you for everyone for tuning into this important conversation today. I had jotted down a lot of my thoughts, so you might see me refer to my notes as I'm talking. In my work, we observe a lot of sort of the experiences of families, and it seems to us that the outside world predominantly sends messaging about the joy of permanency. And although this is wonderful, there's often little acknowledgement or understanding about the sorrows that are also a part of that journey. This can leave a little bit of room only for families and children to be allowed to grieve in a mainstream society. It seems there's often an expectation or a feeling from society that these families and children should feel only joy and gratefulness. Ultimately, this can create isolation for them in grieving, and sometimes an unnecessary shame that can be experienced by the children as well as the adults involved. As an Adoption and Permanency Resource Center, our role is to continue the education and public awareness around the experiences and needs of children and youth in care, as well as their birth and adoptive families. In truth, no one knows better how to actually celebrate the joys and sorrows of adoption and permanency than the families themselves. And they do this, but they often feel like they have to do it alone in isolation or in the company of other families that are experiencing it in order for people to really understand. This is not a task. We can't change this societal perception overnight. It takes many years to change these perceptions. But what can be done that will have a more immediate effect is to encourage families formed through adoption and permanency to be part of a post-adoption permanency support system. This is critical in providing a safe space for families to celebrate the joys of their families among those who can understand and honor the sorrows at the same time. So sort of joy and sorrow in the same cup. Lobbying government to recognize the importance of funding post-adoption and permanency programs and supports with people that are competent in these areas of family preservation, we believe to be critical. Loss is experienced by everyone for permanency to happen in the first place. Continuing to advocate for more help in addictions, family preservation, and mental health systems honors the struggles that birth parents are enduring. This shows compassion and empathy towards birth parents. And it also shows our children that they are allowed to feel pain and loss and that it's okay to to have that joy and sorrow in the same cup. I think that's probably my time for that piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Yannick, you, I understand, might add some personal lived experience to the conversation. I acknowledge that strength that takes. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in adoption. I'm not working in that field, but I did with my wife adopted two children, and I can totally relate it to what Leah said. Our children they didn't ask to be adopted. Of course, in our case, they were abandoned almost at birth, and they joined our family when they were about 12, 15 months old. Just a month ago, less than a month ago, my little one, she just turned 6, and she was crying her life, and she was thinking about her birth mother and wondering if she ever gets the chance to meet her, and if she was thinking about her, etc., etc. And it was really tough for us, but we took the time to listen to her and reassure her that we will try to do our best to find her birth mother. She comes from China, so it won't be an easy task. But we said to her that we're not jealous at all, and that she can celebrate her birth mother. She can think about her. She can love her, and she needs to feel that we are with her mother as well in that journey. So I really think it is important to celebrate the fact that as a family, as a parent, we are the lucky ones to be able to fulfill our needs, our dream to become parents. But we, as a community, we need also to recognize the grief and the distress of the children, and sometimes the needs to have expert psychological support for our children. So that's my personal thought that I wanted to add to what Leah said earlier.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Yannick. Lived experience is every bit as legitimate a form of knowledge as any other form of knowledge. So you're an expert here. And thank you for sharing that. I have another question, and I know Michelle, Kim, you're going to answer it. It's really easy, so get ready. You know that acknowledging racism, particularly systemic racism, and acknowledging the need for dismantling systems that are racist is all the rage now. Even people like me are saying, "Yep, got to do that." And child welfare is not exempt from that. We acknowledge the overrepresentation of Indigenous people, Black, and other people of color, racialized people in systems of care. We know. So the simple question for you guys is, what are we gonna do? Like, if we're there at a moment when things need to change, what can we do to change things? What actions can be taken to change the systems that are so oppressive, really? Okay, Michelle, like 3 minutes, just tell us what to
3
do.
minutes.
And we'll be done.
Just stop being racist.
Yeah, okay.
We're done.
Well, yeah,
Okay,
that's
no,
me.
seriously.
We're talking about the system.
Well, the system's made up of people. So it's a question that I typically get asked because I'm the lead at our agency as far as equity. What falls under my umbrella are those two huge things, the overrepresentation of Black children and youth in care, and overrepresentation of Indigenous children. So in our province, we already have a project pushing forward for the last 5 years now, and it's still at the beginning stages of addressing the overrepresentation of Black children in care. We also have, as a province, as our sector, offered an apology in 2017 and then came up with 9 commitments. So I always think of it now as my 11 and 9. So there are 11 race equity practices to address the Black children. So really what it is, it's a blueprint that through community involvement, along with our Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies and the ministry, put together this plan. And if you do these 11 things, that will address it. If you actually could do them, it absolutely would. For me, whenever I talk about training and people come, I said, there's no formula. It really upsets people.
Yeah.
It's as simple as you are of no use unless you understand your own identity and how it's implicit in the racism that is existing. The child welfare system is based on racism. Like it is. It's a Eurocentric lens that did not have space for the other identities. And so used biases and all of these things to make decisions, which became policies, which became all of those things. Like our country is founded on racism and the genocide of Indigenous people and the enslavement of Black people. So it comes back to, yes, in our world, most people are social workers, and there's this belief that if I'm a social worker, I can't be racist. But really to understand how within the system and the system that you've grown up in, you cannot be anything but, not overtly. So I think you can't really serve anyone, the families that you're working with, or anyone, until you understand that your identity is not neutral and it impacts the people that you are working with that are othered in every which way. So we can change policies. I totally agree with that. I think for us in Ontario that we have the One Vision, One Voice, and that's the name of the project that addresses the overrepresentation of Black children and youth. And we have the 9 commitments. It's people. So we can change the policies. So I say to people, they come to do our 3-day training. It's mandatory in our agency. That's only the beginning. This isn't like standards training, because this will only give you the language, a very basic understanding, but then I impress upon people, you have to actively participate. And that means you have to take responsibility for your learning. And I use the example when I became the director that oversees the Indigenous unit in the spring. I'm not Indigenous. Prior to that, I'd already started doing reading about that to understand more and understand treaties and status and all of those things. And I'm a Black person. So, but then when I moved into the role, still being committed to that learning every week, every day, I'm trying to, even if it's little 2-minute things, people, there's YouTube. Like there's no excuse. There are audiobooks. Like, so for me, that's the simplest thing to start with, because it doesn't matter what policies, unless you understand how your identity is implicitly impacting the system. And that includes me. I look at how am I received by Indigenous people? I'm a Black woman overseeing this. I come to the space with a different lens though. So there's a lot of things that I understand, and then I struggle with some white people don't understand. But then I go, it's because of my identity that I'm able to have a little more understanding or be in a different space with that. So I think it goes back to the individual, and that's where I always want to start.
Thank you.
So there's your simple answer.
It was in a funny sort of way, as young people say, it's not rocket science. It's just really difficult work to do and make happen. Thank goodness there's people like you in agencies pushing that work. And I'm sure you don't have to talk about it now. You have the scars to prove it, right? That it's not easy to push that agenda. Yeah, people like me don't really want to change. It's hard. Yeah. Sorry, Kim, I promise I wouldn't editorialize, but that's such an important conversation, this question, and good answer, Michelle. Kim, what can you tell us?
Hi, Michelle, thank you so much for what you had to say. And I truly believe that it is our responsibility for each of us in Canada and as social workers to learn about the history of Indigenous and Black people and others of minority. And one of the things that the Ministry of Children and Families within British Columbia, what they do is adoptive parents that are adopting non-Indigenous, adopting Indigenous children, they must take a course on the history and how to support their Indigenous children, and how do they support and keep those cultural connections with their communities and families. I was part of that was one of the instructors when I was doing that. And there was also support with the Adoptions BC here in Canada, the Federation. And what was always so surprising is there was people, adults that lived right next door to residential schools and had no idea of what was going on. People made the assumptions that children were getting free food, free clothing, free room, room and board, and what was the big deal? And they were shocked as to what was happening to children all across Canada as late as 1996, when the last residential school closed down. Even within the university, I teach a course there at the University of Victoria, and I'm having students in 3rd year and 4th year that are coming in, and they too are shocked at Canada's history, and trying to move them forward to understand, because what I found was a lot of people felt guilt, internal guilt about Canada's policies, what the Indian Act did. And it was, some people would get angry, and some students got angry. Some people were brought on shame and guilt. And I said, this is not what this is about. What it's about is about your learning and trying to understand the importance of Indigenous children being connected to their families and to their culture, and how important that is, and what's happened with all across Canada. I'm just looking down at my notes here. Also, BC is also working on right now, is within our adoption legislation, is recognizing custom adoption, and how do we support custom adoption as well. And one of the things that I have been advocating for, it just seems years and years and years, is providing post-adoption services for the families. And also, those post-adoption services should also include adoptive families being able to travel to the children's communities as well. It always seems to be a barrier. We need to figure out how to have those voices as social workers to ensure that Indigenous children are able to get the supports that they need, and also the adoptive parents to get the supports that they require as well, so that they have the best possible outcome.
Thank you. Yeah, it seems to me maybe, Michelle and Kim, you should be asking people like me, what are you going to do to change the system? Not us asking you what needs to be done. But Michelle, I know on the ground, you in London, and I have a couple minutes, you're working on some unique initiatives like the Aunties and Uncles program in terms of permanency and culture. Can you tell us in just a couple minutes again about that?
Yeah, so it's a really simple concept. So I went to do a talk for the Congress of Black Women here in the city, and so I was filling in for someone, had the slideshow, recruiting for foster and adoptive parents, and I looked out at the women and I thought, oh goodness, you don't want to do this. You're like my mother's age. You don't want to be adopting. This is a big ask. And so I just started thinking about, what do we normally do in our community? That our kids have aunties and uncles that aren't necessarily blood, and how they take on the roles of aunties and uncles. And sometimes they have to assume the roles as the main caregivers. So I then started asking, if there was a young Black child, let's say a female, 8, who was placed in a home that wasn't Black, they didn't know how to do the hair, would that be something you'd be willing to sort of sign on for, to go to their home or have them come to your home, and then have that really parlay into an actual relationship as an auntie and uncle? And so everyone seemed to really love that idea. So I partnered with someone who was at our provincial office, and we came up with the name Aunties and Uncles. And so we're still trying to move it out of its infancy, because it does require sort of the infrastructure as to the recruiting, the training, the screening, the matching, providing supports for aunties and uncles, because a lot of times people will come because they have certain interests, or they just have that ability to give of themselves in that way, but also need to have an understanding of some of the challenges and traumas that the children and youth that we have might be coming with. So not just to say, here you go. So it's along the idea of big brother, big sisters, but really trying to make a cultural match, and then in worst case scenario, a racial match, because a lot of times the children and youth are in homes that are not reflective of who they are. And that really scares me and makes it even more pressing right now, given what's happened and that things have accelerated as far as what's happened in the murder of George Floyd, and who's processing that with them.
Yeah.
And how does that impact their identities? So that's kind of a little snippet as to what we're trying to move along. And love that I'm getting help from people here. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. You've got this, Michelle. This is good work. Kim and Catherine and Kathy, and I asked not to do that, to have a Catherine and Kathy, but darn Julie did it anyway. Thank you. I have a question for you, and it's about the voices of post-adoptees and former youth in care. How do we make sure we value, respect, honor those voices, use those voices? I was talking about lived experiences being a legitimate source of knowledge. How do we make use of that? How do we be active listeners? What's our role? What are systems' roles, people's roles in doing that? So maybe Kim, you could go first, and then over to Catherine and Kathy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Active listening. You said it all, Erwin. We do need to listen, but we need to act. I think that's what's really important. There's, research out there that I'm aware of with Dr. Janine Carrier, because I was a part of that, where, adults were interviewed, adult adoptees were interviewed, youth were interviewed, and we need to create change, within our provinces right across Canada. And who better to listen to than our youth that are being adopted, or youth that are going to be adopted, or adults that have already been adopted. They are truly the experts here. We are the ones that are trying our best, as social workers across this country. We're hoping that it's going to be the best outcome, and adults, we need to listen to them to hear what changes need to be done to the system. How can we do this work way better? I think there needs to be more research, more current research, and we need to look at the old research. Has anything really been done? What changes really? What do we need to do? I truly believe we need to listen to them. I'll just share a really quick story that I had with one child that it was youth, and he was in the process of being adopted. And I asked him the question. I said, if I could give you 3 wishes of within your culture to create change, what would it be? And he said, unfortunately, he said, to make everybody white. And I was devastated by his answer. And I was just like, why do you say that? And he said, so people would stop fighting. Our youth see the things on the media, on the TV, shortage of water, within our First Nations communities. And, it just keeps coming up over and over again. And we keep hearing the same history over and over again. And our children and adults, we need to hear their voices. We need to be those creators of change for all adoptees and adoptive parents as well.
Thank you. Powerful. Catherine?
Hi.
There you are down there.
I'm just going to say, excuse me if I cough, I have a cold, so I'm trying not to. But I come to this question with two perspectives. I come from I'm somebody who was adopted, and I also get the pleasure in my job of having to work with and have on panels former youth in care and grown adoptees. So it's really important because it's the voice that most of their lives is left out of the conversation around adoption and foster care. We don't hear, we hear about how foster parents feel and adoptive parents and their struggles. We hear about the emotions that like biological parents do, but it's not often heard the voices that the kids have when they're young and growing up. And nobody actually asks usually too. So a lot of times growing up, people told me how I should feel about my adoption, right? Not, and when you think about it, when a child's put into foster care or a child is placed for adoption, they have everybody has a say but them. So you're going to learn a lot from this. You're going to learn the part of a whole missing piece of the conversation too. Some thoughts I had too is we ask a lot about the challenges and some rough things that youth have been through, but I'm also mindful myself that we ask positive questions about strengths, because that's important too. Like it gets tiring to only have to tell people about, this was hard, that was hard, let's talk about the things that you've come through and you become stronger for. Also, sometimes you have to, when youth are sharing their point of view, we have to let go of our agenda. Sometimes we might come to the table with we're trying to promote a certain message, but sometimes that's not going to happen. They have something to say. It's important. It's even more important than the message we had to come out, because it's what the real truth of the situation is. We also have to think about barriers to speaking, make sure we provide them with honorariums, childcare. If they need childcare, let's help provide that too. And one thing I do in my work a lot is if I have questions, not only do I give them to the youth ahead of time, I ask them, what do you think about it? What would you like to change? Is there something that you don't like? I'm working on a panel right now, and a youth added 2 questions, and one I would have never thought of because while I was adopted, I did not grow up into foster care, and her question was absolutely the most important question to be asked. So it's really good to have them as a partner, equal partner in the whole thing, the whole way through. Thanks.
Thanks, Catherine. I love that word, partner.
Yes.
You've done it well. Kathy, hi. Nice to see you again.
Hi there. Nice to see everyone. It's a pleasure to be on this panel. Well, again, when we're working with youth and young adults, we have to value and respect their lived experience. And we do that by also valuing their time and their voices. Youth will tell you nothing for us without us. And that means that these are their programs, their platforms, their voices. We are their allies and supporters, but it really has to be guided by the youth. And so we do that by ensuring that they, first of all, have a safe space when they're sharing. That they're given a lot of preparation, like Catherine said, that they know what questions are going to be asked of them. At the Adoption Council of Canada, we have a wonderful program that's our Youth Speak Out training program. And so youth actually get the opportunity to learn these advocacy skills, to have mock panels, to get really comfortable advocating for themselves. And then they expand that to advocate for systems and changes within the system. We also have to debrief with our youth after they're speaking. That's so important. They need to have access to trauma-informed counselors, and we need to make sure that that's available to them whenever they're participating in something like this. And I love that Catherine said we need to also focus on the resiliency and the strength. I am humbled every day by the incredible youth and young people that I work with and by my own children. And we need to really value that and hear that. We have so much to learn from them, and our role truly is to be active listeners. So time, experience, and honorariums for their time. I would never ask a youth to speak without considering the fact that they're giving up their time, that they might be in school, they might be working. And so we really show that we value their voice by giving all of those things in a space that they're comfortable in. So thank you very much. We're all very passionate about that work.
Thank you. I know you are. My question next is for Kim and Leah and Yannick and Julie. I'm as you heard earlier, I was an adoptive parent and not in the age of openness. And now we're there, right? In this time where openness is an accepted concept. What things are changing with respect to openness, especially with families and communities of origin? And how can we help adoptive parents and kin and customary care families understand and navigate openness in all forms that are, I guess, beneficial to children?
Okay, so
Who-
what I think
That's Kim,
is,
yeah.
what I think is really changing in regards to that is that we are having those conversations with adoptive parents about the importance of planning for Indigenous children. That's been my experience, and the importance for their identity. As Michelle said, there are things that our non-Indigenous adoptive parents are not aware of in regards to children's culture or values or traditions, and we need that support from the biological families. One of the things that I did with Latal Smanam was I used to have meetings with the maternal and the paternal sides of the family in regards to how can they be supportive of their nieces, nephews, grandchildren, to support the adoptive parents in regards to being a part. It was actually looking at the biological family accepting the adoptive family into their family. They become one huge, massive family. And that's lifelong. It's not just until they turn 18 or 19 of age of majority. This is for their whole lives, because there is so much research out there where children, during teens, and that they start looking for their biological family. And if adoptive parents are already connecting children with their biological families or community, there is less chances of adoption breakdown as well, because the research is out there as well, that if children are not connected and to their identities, there is a high chance that adoption breakdowns can happen. So these are good things, and we all come together, and it's listening to youth as well. How do you want that to happen? And it's not finding just one person, it's finding numerous people within family and or community to support that child, to support the youth, support the adoptive families and the biological families. How do we make this work for the whole family and community?
Wow. Thank you, Kim. Leah?
Yeah, okay. So in regards to what's changing with respect to openness with families and communities of origin, in 20 years of working in this field, I personally, and being sort of the first point of contact for many families in our province that are considering or interested in adoption, I've observed a great shift in perspective towards openness in adoption and permanency. So families are coming to adoption and permanency today they're much more willing to learn, to navigate, and to consider openness and understand its vital importance to a child. So I believe, though, that there's also outside factors that have impacted this as well, not just the fact that it's been more commonly practiced in the last 2 decades, but there are other things out there that are also impacting this. And I think one of the real important ones is truth and reconciliation. I believe it has positively impacted the understanding around the importance of identity, culture, and heritage, and the need to know who we are and where we've come from. And I think that that's a universal right for everyone. And I think that's a message that people are starting to really take to heart when it comes to children that have to be, raised in a family other than their family of origin. So I'm happy to see those changes coming that way. The other sort of observation I've made is actually through television shows and social media. There have been a few important TV shows in recent years. Now, none of them ever depict adoption and child welfare the way that we work in this field would like to see. But there's been a few that have had some pretty positive impacts and have started showing other sides. And one of them would be This Is Us, which is a weekly program. And the other one, a movie called Instant Family. So these shows, I believe, have had a broad-reaching impact on society and have helped people to understand the importance of connections for children. When people can see the emotions involved and they understand the circumstances, they can have empathy for the whole situation. They can be more willing to navigate openness in all of its forms for the benefit of a child. Sometimes society needs a reminder that all parents love their children. And some of these shows and things have sort of, I think, shown a deeper level of that than what we've previously seen. The other thing is, I think equipping families with solid information who are beginning the process of adoption or permanency for a child is absolutely paramount. So as a community, we need to recruit and prepare the therapeutic kind of families that these kids need. We need to focus on always finding families for children and not finding children for families, and keeping a focus on those who understand and can uptake the responsibilities of navigating openness in all of its forms.
Thank you. Yeah, true. Yannick?
I totally agree with what you just said, Leah. How can our children be strong if they are unable to recognize their roots? I think it's really important for us to learn more about our children country of origin. Our children comes from Asia, South Korea and China. And when we went there, we try to spend a lot of time with our kids and visiting their country to have an understanding of their country. Here, we're living in Montreal. It's kind of also easy for us to expose our children to their culture of origin. We can attend cultural events, eat Asian food. We are able to develop a relationship with the Asian kids as well. So even our children are still young, they are 6 and 9, we encourage them to have curiosity and desire to learn about their roots. We are just starting to plan with our oldest one when he's going to be an adult to visit South Korea, and the same thing with the youngest one for China. If they are able to, and if they want to meet their birth parents, in the case of my oldest one, if the birth mother is willing, they are going to be able to meet each other. And even our son says that he may move back to South Korea when he become an adult. And it's kind of, oh, really? I'm kind of a bit shocked, but I think we need to be open to that kind of comment, because he wants to learn more about South Korea and his roots, but we are kind of okay with that as well, because when I was young, I was living in Saguenay, north in Quebec, but now I'm living in Montreal. I'm not living with my parents, and I don't see them too often, but I think it's going to be a bit the same thing with my kids. And if he feels that way, and if he decides to move back to South Korea, I think we are going to encourage him and also I'm gonna still be his father, so I'll be able to visit him, or even with technology nowadays, it's kind of quite easy to keep in touch. But I think we really need to be focused and encourage them to look into their roots and not to be afraid of it.
Mhm. Thank you, Yannick. Julie.
Hi, I have to begin by saying thank you, Erwin, for being here, and also like thanking everyone around for all the knowledge. It is just mind-boggling to hear everyone from coast to coast and sharing this. Anyways, I'm learning a lot about some of the practice that are being done across. So thank you. Openness, I have to, be honest here, is not a choice for parents anymore, for adoptive parents. It is the choice of our children. They have the means to go and search the web. I see it all the time on Facebook. People are asking, I was born here, could you help me find my family? We have 23andMe. We have all of these things that are, so I think we need to get on board. It's not a choice. We need to get on board. And I was very, very lucky 20 years ago when I was living in California. One of my friends who was a birth mom told me about this crazy idea that when she made a choice of a plan for adoption for her daughter, she selected her parents. So obviously I learned about their story, and it's been a beautiful, long lasting journey between her and her daughter. And so when I began my journey through adoption, openness was the first thing. I thought I was going to go do an open private adoption. That's how I wanted to grow my family. And so I did some courses, and I was really engaged into this. I have lost my parents in my early 20s, both of them. And so I was really willing to grow my family and welcome new addition very selfishly, so I can have folks, to relate to and talk and get feedbacks, but also for the benefit of our children. And we ended up adopting publicly, and we were very fortunate to once our children moved in with us, we were given frames from their families, pictures of their father, their mom, their extended families and all of that. So we put them in the house, and it was like, a way for us to show to our children that we were here to co-parent. We were the present parents on a daily basis, but that we would always welcome and try to honor as best as possible the legacy of their families of origin. And so it took a long time for us to be able to meet with them, but we did get lucky. At some point to ended up being meeting with their dads, their biological dads, their grandma, their aunts and cousins. And this is really precious to us. I do, for my parents' birthday, my own parents' birthdays and these passing away, I do a dinner that I just make to honor them. And so we've continued this tradition for our children, where they don't necessarily always want to talk, but they know that this moment, this space is made for them. We often buy flowers. I do that for my parents. So I do this for the kids too, for their birthdays, for their passing away. We try to really make it that it's a space for them, that there's no elephants in the room. Their parents are important. I text with grandma. It's the way that we are always interacting. And by allowing to show our children that their family, their attachment, their initial attachment is important. We also, for kids to thrive, they need to have strong attachment, and we cannot sever those attachments. And then the same thing with their foster family. To us, their foster family is a part of our family. We don't see them all the time. I don't see my brother all the time, just like you, Yannick. It's like we don't need to see each other all the time, but they are meaningful people, and they're welcome to discuss about them, to talk about them. And I love, Leah, you said something. You said finding families for children and not children's for family. And I think that that's really key in everything that we do. I love the Wendy's wonderful recruiting program, because they put the child at the center and they really ask them, like, so what kind of family do you want? And so it really empowers the child. So I think, openness is a way for us to truly help our children to thrive, to strengthen their attachment, because they've had so many loss.
we owe it to them. And ultimately, as I said, for me, it was a very selfish gift, is that we grow our family, and that is really important.
Thank you, Julie. I learned too, just from listening to you there. We use the word child-centered, and there's a lot of talk about reforming child welfare these days. And I'm wondering, in a using a child-centered lens, how do we reform, or what reforms are necessary to first support family preservation before children come into the system, to support reunification when it's possible, and then to find permanency if necessary in all its forms? What reforms are necessary in the system to do that? And I have Leah and Yannick ready or able to talk about that. So Leah?
Sure. Okay, so some of my thoughts around this, I'm not going to profess to sort of know all the details of what's currently being done in all of these areas, because there's just so many different things, and across our nation, so many differences. So some of these things that I might say are my thoughts, they may be being done and being done well, or maybe they're not being done at all. So I think when it comes to supporting family preservation, first and foremost, we have to continue on with this journey of truth and reconciliation. So given the overrepresentation of Indigenous children and youth and children of color in our child welfare system, I think we all have to absolutely first acknowledge and understand the history of what brought us to this place where we are today, and continue that commitment and implementation of the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. That's essential. And then the implementation of Bill C-92, I believe, will be a really big step towards supporting family preservation, and the interpretation of how that happens in each province will be interesting to watch unfold. When it comes to supporting reforming family reunification, those pieces, in addition to sort of what I previously mentioned, I think where possible, we have to be able to provide ongoing supports for these families. They need this continuum of care and a circle of support. Once children are reunified with their families, the family as a whole unit needs a continuum of care put in place, and preferably with professionals that are not changing all the time, people that are consistent, that they can develop relationship with, because these are vulnerable things that go on when families are trying to be reunified and stay together. So having people that aren't always changing, I think, would be helpful. During this time, I think families need access to really good mental health supports, and someone who could be checking in with that family unit frequently. In supporting and reforming all forms of permanency from a child-centric lens, I think most important, we already talked a lot about youth and hearing the youth voice and helping youth and engaging them in youth speak out opportunities, which is so important. But we need to talk about the other side of that too. And that is the child welfare system we need the change makers and the policy makers to step into the lives of these children and youth, birth parents and adoptive parents and permanency parents. And they need to do that with listening ears and seeing eyes in order for them to really know what's needed. There are so many people that work in child welfare who need to hear these stories and be in those trenches to understand them at a level where they can actually go back and make really positive, good, solid child welfare practice and programs. I think that would be a way of having these things viewed through a real child-centric lens, is to consider those voices and actually, I mean, it's shocking to me sometimes how many people work in these areas that have heard our youth speak out team for the first time. And they're overwhelmed by those stories. And I feel like if people are working with society's most vulnerable children, they should have some real deep competencies with that. And no better place to get it than directly from the children and families involved themselves.
Thank you. Very truly. Yannick? You're muted.
Sorry about that. So I think here the most important thing it is to have a child-centric lens when considering these options. Permanency and attachment are to be taken into consideration to avoid playing yo-yo with the children's, and for the sake of family preservation and building capacity to develop healthy attachment. I think there's a reform or improvement in the child welfare system to be done, especially in Quebec. I'm not too much aware of what else is missing in Canada, but here in Quebec, there's a big lack of post-adoption services. If you are looking in, let's say, greater Montreal area versus region, there's not, even in Montreal, there's not a lot of expert and post-adoption services, but it's even worse when you go further in the region. You really need to develop and expertise and to preserve also that expertise, because there's a lot of retirements and the people, the expert in that field are not at the beginning of their career. So we need to improve and preserve that expertise and develop and invest more money into it. And in the sake of also regarding the family reunification, I'm really happy that the province of Quebec 2 years ago amended the rules about confidentiality of information related to the identity of person born and adopted in Quebec and their natural parents. In June 1918, adoptees have now have the rights to know the identity of their biological parents unless the latter have indicated that they refuse to be contacted. But that's a really great win for that battle and for kids to know a bit about their history.
Thank you, Sue. Julie and Kathy, you both lead advocacy adoption programs. You do that anyway. Does Canada need to have a new understanding about adoption and quote unquote permanency? Does Canada get it? Who wants to go first? Julie?
I can.
Yeah, you can.
I think that Canada absolutely needs to change its adoption lens. Like children that are available for adoptions are no longer babies, and we need to help those who are hoping to grow their families through adoptions, to help them see that sibling groups and in Ontario, I think the average age is 7 years old for a child. When we grew our family, and I never thought we would do it like that, because as I said before, I thought it was going to be a private open adoption, and overnight we ended up growing our family with 3 children that were 8, 11, and 13. So not your typical youngsters. And so I think that we need to help people really learn about the fact that there are youths and there are merits. Now today, my 8 years old, 8 years ago, is now 16. So that's pretty awesome. He's grown, I can hang out with him. And it's just, there's perks. Obviously, I missed a ton of time with them, but I am so grateful for what I have with all of our children. I took some notes. I mean, the one thing that is also really important that we need to reform is that we shouldn't say that because you're 18, you're no longer eligible for permanency. Like every child, every young adult, I at 22 years old and at 25 years old when I lost my parents, I realized I was an orphan, and thankfully I had a village around me to support me. But our children have gone through trauma and losses and struggles. They need to know that they have at least one adult that will stand by them no matter what, that will fight for them. And so I don't agree that we have to have a cutoff at 18, 19 years old to say to a child, it's too late, you're too old, you're on your own. Yesterday, I had the privilege of watching a webinar that Erwin was on, and this young lady that I kind of grew into my heart, Cheyenne, was there as well. And she spoke about something that really resonated with me. She said, it's not because you have a permit that you can go and hit the highway. It's not because you're 18 that you are ready to live by yourself and that you're ready to thrive on your own. So I think that we need to change that mentality. I think that we need to make sure that every Canadian child has given the right to have a permanency, and permanency is it can be a figure of your auntie and uncle program, Michelle, that somebody will just join, or a community parent through the customary care or the band. It could be a neighbor, it could be a teacher, it could be somebody that that you're in a safe space to be. And I think that we need to really start looking at the way that we do things differently for our children. Cheyenne, 6 years ago, I heard her speak, and she was very powerful, and she was talking about family as a verb.
Mhm.
And I think we can share the link on that. But family is a verb because it is not stagnating, it is moving, it is growing, it is expanding, and through you may lose some, you may grow some, but it's always living. And I think that that's really important as we're looking, and I know Ontario is doing a lot of work right now, and I hope that Canada comes together to streamline the work that we are doing so that we can learn what is successful. I'm hearing some amazing stuff in BC, like it's beautiful, and I'm hearing some amazing stuff in Saskatchewan, or even like in New Brunswick. Who are the experts? What are we doing? What is the feedback from our children and from our family? And I think that, to your point, Yannick, seriously, like post-adoption support, post-adoption permanency is a must, because if we do not empower parents and caregivers to have the support so that they can be strong with for their children, because it's not always easy and peasy and rosy, right? When we're growing our family, we're going through a lot of different experiences that are not easy. I see you smile, Yannick, but it's true, right? It's just like, so we need to have families truly have the right support so that they can be strong for their children, and then their children can grow and truly like flourish and reach their greatest potential. So those are some of my feedback or suggestion.
No lack of passion there. Thank you. Kathy, what do we need to know as
Thank
Canada?
you, Julie. Well, I think that we need to understand and flip the script and the lens that we have on adoption and permanency. Across Canada, many children who are living in and from the child welfare system are older. They're between 12 to 18. They may be living with different special needs, and we need to get real. We need to recruit and train resource parents. We need to make sure that that's culturally appropriate, and we need to put money behind every adoption and every placement. We need to give subsidies. We need to give respite. We need to make sure that families have counselors who are trauma informed, and we need to support these families. We are in the trenches. I'm one of those families, and we need resources and supports for our children to thrive and grow, and our families to stay safe and healthy. And so we need to get real about what the needs are. And we do that by truly working in the best interests of the children and the youth that we're serving and those caregivers that are supporting them. What that also means at a very basic level in all our child welfare agencies across Canada is we have to support first families first. Let's put the resources in, let's put the supports in, let's try to keep families together when it's safe to do so. We have to look at customary caregivers. We have to look at kinship caregivers. We have to look at the child's circle and their community. And while adoption is a wonderful option, it should be the last option. We truly have to do that work first before we get there for a child. And once we're there, we need to make sure that there are supports and resources that are going to allow our kids to thrive and to grow into the incredible people that they can become. But truly, if a child is living with a special need, for example, like fetal alcohol syndrome disorder, that is a lifelong need. That child is going to need a village of care and support and resources. And that is also going to have a financial implication for our families. So let's get real about the supports that we need to put in place to ensure that all families are healthy. Thanks, Erwin.
Thank you, Kathy. Don't go anywhere. I wanted to ask you about work that you and Julie, among others, have been doing your organizations to build better supports for families right as they adopt, and have the same kind of benefits from employment insurance that other Canadians might have, so that children can attach. You've done some incredible advocacy around that. And Yannick, I know, I'm not even going to say, I know you have something to say about what Quebec has done as of this, or going to do as of December 1st, which is exciting, and it comes from your efforts. And as somebody who was a formal child advocate, it's not often that you get even small wins and see your issue moving forward. So I'm hoping you talk a little about, the three of you talk a little about that. I don't know who wants to first. Go ahead, Yannick.
The Federation of des parents adoptants du Québec has been asking that for the equality of the parentals, le congé parental, for the last 15 years. But my involvement started 7 years ago. I was just a normal parent adopting a child, and I was kind of shocked to know that, oh, we don't have the same parental leave as the biological children. So I was kind of a bit shocked and frustrated, and started to with some parents to make effort meeting, etc. What can we do? So we were at the beginning 4 parents, and we wrote a brief with the support of the expert in the field of adoption and all the adoption agents in Quebec. So we wrote a brief, and we did also petition after petition. So multiple petition filed to the Assemblée nationale in Quebec, because now the government switch, etc. So we needed to be focused and redo petition, also to be aware that the government will need to answer to our request. But we wrote multiple also letters to our MPs, and we managed to have private meetings to expose our situation, etc. So slowly but surely, we kept the attention of the government, and we were able to have also interviews in radio, TV show, etc., in the newspaper as well. We met the labor minister and the administration of the Quebec parental insurance plan. So slowly but surely, the snowball was growing, and the key here was we really needed to have the mobilization of the adoption expert. All the agency showed up to explain our needs, because the needs of the parental adoptive family, we are just not a normal family, but our needs are just as much as most important as other needs. So we really needed to have everyone on boards, and we had a really great MP at the National Assembly, Véronique Yvon, who was in the Parti Québécois, and she was able to bring that issue, but she drive our case to this with a non-partisan issue. So that's why she was able to collaborate with all the other party to make the effort that we have the same rights now. And it was also very important to have the support of the population. And when we did the radio interview, TV interview, etc., we realized that 99% of the population was behind us. So it was really helpful to have that support. And also we have been in contact with a lawyer from University of Sherbrooke, and she did with some kind of not student, but a co-worker, a study showing that the current situation in Quebec was really discriminating toward our children or towards the adoptive parent. So all together, with all the momentum, etc., and effort after effort, year after year, of asking and not never giving up. Now, as December 1st, 2020, we are going to have the same parental leave as the biological parent. So we won the battle, but it took 15 years. So it's a big win for us and for the children as well.
Congratulations, Yannick. Thank you for bringing that hope to us. Appreciate it. Where are you going to take us, Julie? And Kathy, going to make that national now?
So I think that investing in our children to create a stronger tomorrow for them and for all Canada, it's not a commodity, but it's actually a reality and a necessity. And it starts with really starting at the base, as Yannick said, you know, we need more time. When we grow our family through adoption or even kinship and customer caregivers, we need time. We need time to help them go through all of their emotions. We need time to put in place like support and even learn for me to learn how to cook for 3 children that didn't eat at all what I used to eat, right? That's just learnings. And you need to have the ability to be there when they come back. My day from the moment that they left school to the moment that they came back was done like running around, putting in place support for them, localizing the right information, getting support for me because I was struggling. I mean, you know, it's normal. Like we're new, we're all learning how to become a family overnight. We don't know each other. We have allegiance to other parents. For example, our children, they are grieving. So we need to be available, emotionally ready for when they come back from school, and we need to be there. And 35 weeks absolutely just doesn't cut it. So thank you, Quebec, for paving the way. Merci énormément au Québec d'avoir instauré ce nouveau congé parental qui est spécifique pour les parents adoptifs, because I think that the federal, we know, I mean, we've been very fortunate thanks to the advocacy work that we've done alongside many of you guys across Canada. Thank you for supporting and standing with us. And the Western University, along with ACC, Cathy. It's been wonderful to meet with various political parties and having all of their endorsement, and to then be put as a election promise by the Conservative and the Liberal Party was really, really amazing. And then to find ourselves in the ministry letter. So we're very hopeful that we're going to get there. But I really think that it's, you know, if you want to read more about the advocacy work that we have done, we have stories that you can go, we have a bunch of blogs that have been written by people across the country. We have some messaging, and in fact, just last year, shy of a few days, Kathy, Erwin, myself, and a few more folks, we were at the Economic Club of Canada, talking about the need for time to attach, which is so important. So you can look at that. And we ran a survey across Canada, and we had almost 1,000 families, parents and caregivers contributing their thoughts about their experience. And it was not unrare that families were parenting children with various struggles, be it that they were on IEPs, be it that they struggle with physical disabilities or developmental trauma, or complex needs. So we are having families that are growing, wanting to help their child truly rise and heal so that they can become their true self, but we're giving them 35 weeks. It's just not right. I think that, you know, it's not for the parents, truly. The leave is for the child so that they can attach and truly start the beginning of their healing. So I think it's really important. And I know that Kathy has so much more to share too, so I'm going to give her time to talk, but go ahead and learn about time to attach, because I think, you know, thanks to Quebec, I think we're going to get closer to it. And Kathy.
Oh, thank you, Julie. Well, it's been a pleasure to advocate with Adopt for Life and Western University for Time to Attach. The Adoption Council of Canada has been advocating since the 1990s, and we're fortunate now with the Liberal Party that 20% of our work can be advocacy work, which is great. So for Time to Attach, we need you again. We need your voices. We need you to contact your MPs and your MPPs. We need you to tell them what your realities are dealing with your family and why you need this additional 15 weeks to help support your family. We know it's just a start, but it's an important start on your journey. And so, my children are adults now. They're 29 and 24. I won't personally benefit from this leave, but I know from my lived experience that it's a leave that will only start you on your journey. And we feel so strongly about that. So we would really hope that this becomes a reality in 2020 or 2021. We're flexible, Julie, but we need your help. So get out there, advocate with us, write that personal letter to your MP and your MPPs.
Thank you, Kathy. Will do. Do we have questions? I'm looking at Chantel. Do we have questions from any of the viewers on Facebook Live?
We don't have any particular specific live questions. We've had a lot of encouragement, a lot of comments from everybody watching. So we definitely have still have a few minutes left. We do. To circle back if there are certain points that maybe some people didn't get a chance to address.
If people have points, but tomorrow is National Child Day in Canada. Well, around the world, actually. It's the anniversary of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And I think we have like 9 minutes. A lot of people, 9 minutes. I'm wondering if anybody has something to say to Canada about National Child Day and about our children. I know you don't have preparation for that, but you got your elevator pitch to Canada. What do you want to say on National Child Day? Anybody want to be brave and say something? You do, Julie? Did you put your hand up?
Of course I do. I've been inspired and I think Adopt for Life, our organization, has been really turning this Adoption Awareness Month to listen to the youth and to listen to their message. And I think that, it's wonderful that we're listening. It's wonderful that we are giving them their stage, but it's time to implement. I think that it's time. I think that they have shared with us so much already. And I mean, Erwin, your office has done a lot of work around this and gathering the voice. And I know that across Canada, there's provincial advocate in their office, and there's the legal youth justice, and there's people all over the place that has bits and parcels of what needs to happen. And this is for the children in care, but this is for the children across Canada. We have, they are our future. If we want to have a strong tomorrow, we need to start investing today. And so I think that it's time that, people get together, that it's no longer what shall we do, is we know what we need to do. So I would urge, as we look, I think Canada has fallen quite drastically, or when you might have noticed stats, but Canada has fallen. Like, I used to beam of pride and thinking that Canadian children were some of the luckiest in the world. And I'm kind of ashamed today to see that this is not what's happening. So I think that we need to do something. And I'm glad that we, are able to meet together and talk, but talking needs to cease and action needs to be implemented. And so I think that this era of time has come. I think that we're seeing it with the Black Lives Matters. I think we're seeing with the adoptees that have just created their own movement, their own Remembrance Day for adoptees. I mean, there's a movement of change, and it's time that we, and especially the leaders of our country, needs to get on that wagon and start moving it forward so that implementation is happening.
Thank you, Julie. And, hi, Kath. Yes, go ahead.
So to me, tomorrow is all about the rights of our children and the rights of our children and youth. And so when I reflect on what we've said today, we need to ensure that our Indigenous children and youth and African Canadian children and youth, any children of color, that their needs are actually being met. And that's a cultural need. That's a lifelong connection to culture, to identity, and to have some permanency in their lives. And we're not there yet. So I think we are all on this panel committed to doing that. But I think that everyone I'm hoping who's watching is also committed to doing that, because we have a lot of work to do.
I'll just check if anybody else has a message to Canada. You don't have to. For me, I often think, and just before I throw it back to you, Chantel, I often think about, and I say it all the time, so you may have heard me, this time when we were talking about young people saying what they really want. They want to be heard. They want to be listened to. They want to be drivers of the car of their own life. They want to be seen as people. And in order for that to happen, they also said they need to have supportive, positive adult relationships in their lives that are genuine, that are long lasting, where they're heard, where they're known. They need these things. And I remember saying this to a deputy minister, and like, probably like some of you who are listening, the deputy minister's like going, his eyes are circling, going, what? And he eventually got frustrated, as lots of people do with me, and he said, well, what the hell do you want me to do with that, Erwin? Like, we can't legislate love. And I was stumped, and I went to a young person after that meeting with the deputy and said, what do I say to that when the deputy minister tells me? And she said, yeah, tell him that he's right. You can't legislate love, but you can legislate the conditions in which love can flourish. And he should try doing that. And for me, listening to you, that's your project, right? Isn't it? And isn't it? It's the project of rights, but it's also your project. You just want to create conditions in which families, in all its form, whatever that means, family is a verb, Cheyenne, and in all its forms, how do families thrive, have what they need to do right by their children so children can experience love. And I congratulate you for all you said, all you do, all you're going to keep doing. And every moment I get, I'll walk alongside you and try and be supportive as I can. So over to you, Chantel.
Thank you, Erwin. That was very well said. So we are coming to the end of our time. So I'm just going to take a couple minutes, just, or not even that long, just to say thank you again to everyone for your time, for your insight, for this great discussion. I think, I'm not going to speak for all of you, but I think each question could have been a panel on its own. But thank you for sharing your thoughts in such a concise way, and to keeping the discussion ongoing. And thank you out there for wherever you are, at home, at work, in your car, for watching and listening and providing your feedback. We appreciate you very much. So be sure to watch next week, Wednesday, November 25th at 6 p.m. The Adoption Council of Canada's Facebook page will be doing their panel, part 3, with a talk with the youth leaders across Canada. So be sure to tune in for that. So until then, be well, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.